Chapter 71, The Genius on the Left, The Madman on the Right, Part 1. Bruce never imagined that his internship would involve so many unexpected situations. What troubled him the most was, of course, his psychology professor, Schiller. This professor acted as if he hadn't just arrived in Gotham a few months ago, but was a native of the city. No, perhaps even most natives couldn't do that. Schiller quickly grasped all the rules of the city with a speed that even Bruce couldn't keep up with, and on that basis, he not only mastered them but also became one of the best at them. Bruce had heard Gordon say that Gotham was like a quagmire, and anyone who entered would slowly sink into this inescapable mire. But Schiller, the professor who claimed to be an ordinary person, plunged headfirst into the quagmire right in front of Bruce. Not only did he react quickly and move nimbly, but he also jumped into the deepest part without any intention of getting out. He transformed himself seamlessly into someone even worse than a scoundrel, knowing everything from the personnel and geographical advantages in gang shootouts, the protection fees for bars and restaurants, and the odds in underground casinos, to the rules for large-scale contraband transactions, security for arms transport, and smuggling routes for dangerous goods. There was nothing this professor couldn't do. Falcone listened attentively to his suggestions, nodding repeatedly, and praised Schiller as a natural-born professional, saying that if he had come to Gotham 30 years earlier, Rodriguez would surely have been a member of the 12 families. This made Bruce's feelings about Schiller very complicated. You might say this professor was doing a good deed, but the methods he used were not just dishonorable, they were downright tantamount to colluding with the corrupt. But if you say he was doing evil, he was indeed using his abilities to constantly disrupt the existing situation in Gotham, and through some extremely outrageous methods, he changed the situation in the direction he wanted. Furthermore, in Bruce's view, this change did not seem to be heading in a bad direction, but rather strangely establishing a crumbling yet better new order. Bruce felt it was absurd, especially when he received news from Gordon that Gotham's crime rate had dropped significantly in the last 2 weeks. In the supply chain created by Schiller, the police's combat effectiveness was greatly enhanced because they were allied with the Falcone family, Gotham's largest mob. Because the police chief was directly supported by Falcone, the Godfather provided them with a large number of heavy weapons, and they also used the Godfather's power to intimidate others. Now, wherever there's a gang fight, they can arrive at the scene within 10 minutes, quickly subdue both sides, and then arrest them and throw them into a mental hospital. Unlike in the past, the police officers are now incredibly enthusiastic about their work. They even compete for field assignments. As long as they can send a full member to a mental hospital, they can take 2% of all the hospital fees paid by that person as their reward. Gordon has been incredibly busy these past few days. Even those perennial layabouts are now clamoring to rush to the front lines and fight for justice and to combat the gangsters. Recently, this righteous detective has even forgotten what justice is. He feels that something is wrong, even though such an effective crackdown on gangs should be a good thing. However, this action not only curbed the gang's arrogance, but also improved the lives of the police officers, making them start to love this damn job. Recently, Gordon was utterly shocked to discover that people throughout the police department were now working overtime. Were they possessed by some kind of demon? Indeed, it is a devil called greed. With a gun in hand, one is not afraid. When you are holding a fully loaded heavy machine gun and demanding that the gang stop firing, you will think that this job is nothing special. And when you can get a considerable reward after doing so, you will think that this is simply the best job in the world. Initially, Falcone needed to send out his black gloves to sow discord between certain gangs and incite them to fight each other. But then anger was ignited. Hyena and Captain joined forces to launch an attack on Snatchers 2 streets away. Locomotive on the edge of the East End quickly joined the battle. 3 of the 4 big bosses on Elizabeth Street wanted to lend a hand. Maroni, who had just finished digesting the corpses of the Red Ravens, got to fight a good fight in the midst of the chaos. The entire East End was in complete disarray. The gang warfare had already resulted in numerous deaths, and in the heat of the moment, the police stormed into the fray armed with heavy machine guns and rocket launchers. The gangsters were dumbfounded. Who was the gang? Us or them? What kind of police use rocket launchers to enforce the law? And so, after a group of people died in their own shootout and another group was arrested by the police, the most powerful gangsters in the East District were severely weakened and no longer dared to venture out. They all went back to their hometowns to lick their wounds. Gordon's field team became famous overnight. All of Gotham knew about the violent tactics of these police officers. Armed pickup trucks floored the gas pedal, bulletproof shields set up, heavy machine guns spraying bullets, RPGs targeting key targets, advancing all the way and finally finishing off the ground with grenades. The most notorious gangsters in the East District have all fallen, so what right do the rest have to say anything? Although this was largely due to Falcone's influence, since the old Godfather was willing to fully support the police, he had both the moral high ground and the power to back him up. Ordinary gangs were unwilling to pay such a high price to provoke the old Godfather, and those who were willing to pay the price were beaten up by this sudden flurry of punches, leaving Gotham strangely quiet. All of this was because of a sudden flash of inspiration from an ordinary professor one morning. Bruce thought that the professor had become the worst of a bad bunch, and the bad bunch treated him as a companion, but the enemy of my enemy became a good friend of justice. Bruce really didn't know how to evaluate this behavior. Of course, Batman is a genius, and after his initial struggle, he felt that he had discovered a new possibility in Schiller's behavior. He always felt that cracking down on criminals should be swift, accurate, and ruthless, like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, and that it would be best to eradicate evil forces completely so that they could never rise again. Schiller, however, did not use this method. Whenever he attacked a force, he not only did not eradicate it completely, but sometimes he would even fertilize the force he had previously attacked, allowing the poisonous seedlings that had been cut down to grow strong again. Then he would use them as wedges to dismantle another complex vine. After witnessing these actions, Bruce asked Schiller the same question again. Are you really just an ordinary person? Or is there some unknown special power that allows you to do all this? Schiller sat in his office chair, twirled the ballpoint pen in his hand, and tapped the desk, gesturing for Bruce to sit down. He said, "The point of my answer is not whether I possess some magical power that ordinary people don't have, but that I'm telling you I'm just an ordinary person. But what I want to tell you is that the most amazing power of mankind is their thinking brain." Schiller stood up and walked to the window. His white doctor's coat made him appear even more upright. Compared to the rather stern-looking professor at the university, Schiller, as a doctor, seemed calmer and gentler. He said, "The answer to this question is not whether I am really an ordinary person, but that, as I have warned you before, your advanced armor and expensive equipment cannot make you a real Batman. Because the answers to the problems that are troubling you are not found in these external things, and in the brain that every ordinary person has. If you just calm down and think about it, you'll realize that pure violence can't achieve any of the things you want, whether it's revenge or saving the city. It's a dead end." Schiller lowered his head, fiddling with the ballpoint pen in his hands, and then said, "Actually, the path you chose is a dead end. But if you don't want to die, you have to find a way out from among countless dead ends. I've only shown you one method, not all of them, not." Bruce said, "Isn't that enough? Force, intelligence, and determination. Isn't that enough?" Schiller said, "And Gotham? When will I be able to learn Gotham? Perhaps it will be when you die." Before Bruce could speak, Schiller said, "Gotham is a book that can never be finished. I'm just a professor. What I do is what I do in class. I've highlighted the key points for you, and you have to write the exam yourself." Bruce said, "Is the focus on power struggles and checks and balances? Or is it the power of wisdom, on thinking and foresight?" "No, just like I do in class, the whole book is important." Bruce was speechless. He didn't know if Schiller was mocking him for not paying attention in class or if he was hinting at something else. But Schiller's answer made him realize something. If using violence to stop the crime in this sinful city is destined to be wishful thinking, and if Batman's strength and resources are not enough to fill this quagmire into a flat plane using such a simple and brutal method, then perhaps it would be better to abandon pure violence and use his other strength, namely intelligence, to manipulate everything from behind the scenes. This city, rife with violence, cannot solve all its problems with violence. Powerful force is merely a stepping stone, not the whole story. When he opened the door with his vast wealth and equipment, he met his mentor, Schiller, who showed Batman a completely new Gotham. A Gotham story that, beyond the surface violence, bloodshed, and intense conflict, is filled with countless mysteries and intricate relationships. When Batman followed the veins within the massive canopy to the deep roots beneath the earth, and when he slid down the ravines of the iceberg into the icy sea, he finally saw the true face of Gotham. This is a new world, Batman thought. But for him, this was not a setback or a blow, but rather a shot of adrenaline. His brain had never worked so fast, and he had never imagined he would have the ability to accept and sort out these complex relationships so quickly, until he could keep up with Schiller's every move. The thrill of gradually uncovering a vast root system along tiny veins fascinated Batman, giving him a greater sense of excitement and pleasure than simply punching a criminal. Bruce thought that perhaps this was the right answer. Perhaps he is just that kind of person, excited like a madman in the face of complex problems that could make any ordinary person feel utterly hopeless. This is him, this is a bat. A bat. A paranoid creature that seeks morbid pleasure and is even more insane than a mentally ill person. Chapter 72: The Genius on the Left, the Madman on the Right, Part 2. The changes at Arkham Asylum were noticed by Gotham's various gangs, big and small. Some of them coveted this prize, but Schiller managed to thwart all the plans targeting him by leveraging the complex relationships between the gangs. Compared to Schiller, the gangs that Bruce used to find troublesome seemed rather unintelligent. Their first thought was assassination, something they were very familiar with. Even the smallest gang could find one or two assassins. However, the deal between Schiller and Falcone brought the Godfather unexpected and substantial profits. The Godfather was getting old and was eager to leave more capital for his descendants. Therefore, he valued this unexpected gain very much. If this system could continue to operate, the business that Evans took over from him would be even more secure. As a result, the entire Arkham Asylum was heavily guarded by the Godfather, and Schiller was one of his top priorities for protection. To this end, he spared no expense in hiring the most elite security personnel. Schiller's irreplaceable value lies in the fact that Falcone saw in him the potential to create a new order. If this professor truly brings more new changes to Gotham, then the Falcone family, by seizing the initiative, will certainly be able to occupy the most important place in these new orders. Among the local gangsters, the biggest one was determined to protect Schiller, and the other smaller gangsters were basically powerless to do anything about it. Falcone had ruled Gotham's underworld for so many years, and even in his old age, his influence remained. The gangs were already weakened, and they were even less able to go head-to-head with this Godfather. Of course, if they couldn't kill Schiller, they could find a way to get rid of him and replace him with their own people. Not everyone had the foresight of Falcone. They only thought that if their own people were in that position, the profits would be enormous. Even without considering the wealth that Schiller might bring from the rules he created, controlling such a place could allow their power to expand several times overnight. They certainly didn't dare to confront Falcone head-on, much less snatch the meat from the tiger's mouth, but they could still pull some tricks. Gotham's gangs are also full of talented people, and some of them are certainly smart. They found Selden, the president of Gotham University. Selden was an unlucky fellow. He originally wanted to recruit a few new professors to counterbalance Schiller, but he didn't expect that the newly recruited Mr. Freeze, Victor, would not only not be on his side, but would also quickly become close friends with Schiller. Before long, the two became best friends who could talk about anything, and Selden's plan failed once again. He hadn't had much peace and quiet before the gangsters came knocking on his door again. Selden was an outsider with no influence in Gotham. However, the rule in Gotham was that you needed at least one gang behind you to have any authority. Selden didn't understand this, so the day after he rejected those gangs, he was shot on his way home from get-off work. The gangsters still had a use for him, so they didn't kill him. When he saw the gang leaders again in the hospital, Selden understood Gotham's biggest survival rule. If you have a gun, you'd better have more bullets than others. If you don't have a gun, then shut up and obey. Selden could rightfully call Schiller back to the school. After all, he was the principal, and it was normal for him to have any academic affairs that needed to be handled by the faculty and staff. If the professor refused these normal work arrangements, then he would be in the wrong. Selden made up an excuse. He figured it didn't matter if Schiller didn't come back. It would be a good excuse for him to cause trouble. He was just looking for a plausible reason. However, Schiller returned the very next day after receiving his call. His attitude was extremely good and his actions were very timely. When Selden saw him in the headmaster's office, he couldn't find a single fault with him. Selden called Schiller back under the pretext of handling some miscellaneous tasks such as processing files. Schiller worked in the archives while remotely managing the situation at Arkham Insanity Hospital. Selden had always enjoyed watching Schiller's classes from the shadows, and now that Schiller was back, he was doing the same, monitoring the archives. Then, Schiller showed him what Gotham City, with its honest and simple people, was all about. Over the next few days, Selden heard the names of the 12 largest gang leaders in Gotham from Schiller's phone conversations. Schiller greeted them at least 100 times in 3 days. Accompanying the gang leaders' names were either terms related to various contraband or slang about smuggling locations. What terrified Selden the most was that they repeatedly mentioned manipulating the police, judges, and juries in their conversations, as casually as discussing what to eat for dinner. Most importantly, one day he overheard Schiller casually say, "If this mayor is incompetent, then replace him. He should bear half the responsibility for Gotham's terrible traffic situation." Since he's incapable of taking responsibility, he still has a life to live. Selden immediately wanted to pack his bags and leave this damned city. As time went on, Selden heard Schiller's conversations become increasingly outrageous, beginning to delve into the secrets of the Falcone family's rise to power, including some of their rather clandestine smuggling routes and their highly profitable plantation businesses. Selden became increasingly alarmed as he listened. Although he was not a native of Gotham, he had spent a long time in the political arena of other cities, and his political acumen was sharp enough. At this moment, Selden realized that Professor Rodriguez, who taught psychology, was probably much more than just a professor. When something exceeds the scope of human cognition, humans will always use their associative abilities to fill in the gaps in their minds to make it reasonable. The brain will automatically search through memory for all sorts of matching details to corroborate this inference, and Selden was no exception. He thought, no wonder Schiller dared to give Bruce such a tough expulsion notice. He was completely fearless. This psychology professor might be the biggest mastermind behind Gotham. He was secretly manipulating all 12 gang families and was the culprit behind the current chaos in Gotham. Selden thought about it more and more, and it seemed reasonable. After all, Schiller's amazing resume didn't seem like something an ordinary person could have, and the fact that he was able to escape so many murders perfectly meant that he might have laid such a large net elsewhere. Selden felt he was getting closer to the truth. Was he an individual or an organization? Who did he represent? What was he doing? What outcome did he want? Selden's associations with these issues terrified him. In his logic, given the rampant presence of gangs in Gotham, it's not surprising that university professors would have connections with them. Just like in this school, most of the teachers and professors are more or less related to gangs, either having relatives or friends working for them, or simply providing professional services to them in exchange for security and extra income. However, this is not the reason why a professor could simultaneously contact the largest mafia family in Gotham and participate in the Godfather's secret business. The evidence that most convinced Selden of his idea was Schiller's tone on the phone, which was not like others, showing both fear and obsequiousness towards the mafia. His tone was always calm, as if everything was under control. Selden could tell that he was in control of the gang, not the other way around. Selden felt he was in a huge mess. Schiller had the power to influence Gotham's biggest gang, yet he chose to continue teaching at Gotham University, and he even seemed to value the position highly. From Selden's perspective, with all that power, why didn't he buy a villa in Gotham's wealthy neighborhood? Why was he still crammed into the faculty apartments at Gotham University? There is only one possibility. He is staying at Gotham University for profit, or there must be something here that Selden doesn't know about that is attracting this mad professor. Indeed, in Selden's eyes, Schiller was a complete madman. Gangs are not docile little quails, especially the biggest gangs in Gotham. The city's evil is almost overflowing, and everyone who has been adrift in this sea of evil for years has almost been corrupted into evil itself. To stand at the forefront of this environment and become a trendsetter at the top of this dark city is to cooperate with any of them, which is tantamount to asking a tiger for its skin. But Schiller not only cooperated with them, he cooperated with all of them at the same time, or rather, he even tried to manipulate them. Having just witnessed the ruthlessness of the gangsters, Selden naturally thought Schiller's behavior was insane. It's like cutting the most dangerous wire among hundreds of tangled wires. If you cut the wrong one, these carnivorous and bloodthirsty jackals will swarm in and devour the audacious person. Selden began to regret it. Wouldn't it have been better to just let Schiller stay in Arkham Asylum? He had finally gotten out, so why did he have to bring him back? It's as if he finally managed to throw a time bomb out, but somehow ended up picking it up himself. Now, Selden was praying desperately that Schiller's tricks wouldn't go wrong. And if they did, he hoped they wouldn't affect Gotham University. Even if they did affect Gotham University, he hoped they wouldn't affect him. However, Selden did have some quick wit to get to where he was today. He knew things couldn't go on like this, and he had to take action. One morning, Schiller went to the archives as usual, intending to slack off while remotely controlling the work. When he arrived, he found that at least 2/3 of the files that had not been filed the day before had all been organized. He checked them with suspicion and found that all the work had indeed been done. What's going on? Is there some kind of fairy maiden named Sea Snail? However, now that the work was done, there was no need to stay any longer. Schiller walked downstairs with a rather puzzled feeling. As soon as he got downstairs, he ran into Principal Selden. Schiller raised his coffee cup to greet him, but Selden had a dark expression on his face and walked past without saying a word. Well, Schiller thought, it seems the principal still doesn't like him. But he's used to it. since the principal hasn't given him a kind look ever since he sent Bruce his expulsion notice. The only strange thing was that the principal, who usually liked to dress himself up smartly, looked a bit haggard today and had big dark circles under his eyes. Chapter 73 The Genius on the Left, The Madman on the Right, Part 2. Schiller was called back by the principal. Even though he could manage things remotely, someone else was still needed to manage the affairs of the mental hospital. This task fell to Bruce. Schiller confidently handed all the work over to Bruce, who always felt that the professor had more confidence in him than he had in himself. He was just a freshman in college, and he was about to take over an atypical mental hospital during his first internship. The mental hospital he was going to manage had no real mental patients, but the patients were more dangerous and troublesome than those with mental illness. When Bruce questioned his ability to handle the job, Schiller told him, "Sometimes, you don't know you're a genius until you push yourself." On his first day at work, Bruce encountered a major problem. He couldn't tell who was who. Although he had memorized all the patient files, which were as thick as a book, and remembered all their names, room numbers, and corresponding medical records, this would have been more than enough for an intern in a regular hospital. Unfortunately, there isn't a single mentally ill person here in the traditional sense. Behind their names and diagnoses lies an extremely complex social identity. Who is a member of which gang? Which gangs are at odds with each other? Who were enemies with whom? Who are partners with whom? This information cannot be found in the medical records. Bruce had overheard some of Schiller's phone conversations in the past. His extraordinary memory turned this information into a beginner's gift. He couldn't figure out everyone's social identity, but that didn't matter. He could deduce it from the existing clues. In addition, Bruce is very good at disguising himself. Just like his disguise of his playboy identity, in this hospital, he became a wealthy man with a carefree personality, a life of luxury, but a yearning for gangster life. The title of the world's richest man provided him with many advantages. Generally, no gang member would think that the world's richest man would deliberately try to get information out of him. Therefore, when Bruce showed interest in gangster stories, the gang leaders just thought that this young tycoon was like a rich kid who had been living a comfortable life for too long and longed for the exciting life in gangster movies. Therefore, although they added a lot of their own fabrications when telling stories, Bruce was still able to deduce real and useful information about gang social relationships from these stories. In a city where almost everyone has ties to gangs, figuring out these complex gang relationships is almost equivalent to figuring out the entire network of the city's underworld. Bruce discovered that the rules of survival in the city were far more complex than he had imagined. Starting from the lowest levels of a small gang, even a small group of only a dozen or so people, they all have their own rules for survival. These small gangs often take on the jobs of patrolling the streets and petty theft, and they also have to pay protection money to larger gangs and be at their beck and call. Larger gangs, numbering in the hundreds, are the mainstream in Gotham. Most of them own one or two businesses, which could be shops or factories. They provide protection for these industries, drive away troublemakers, and remotely control their small gangs to solicit customers. When conflicts arise over customers, they may engage in small-scale shootouts, but these usually involve hiding behind cars and firing a couple of shots with a pistol, rarely involving large-scale firepower. Above that are large gangs with hundreds of members. These gangs have reached another level, and each of them has at least one special industry that they rely on for survival. Bruce discovered that these damned gangs have even managed to specialize in specific industries. When they reach a scale of several hundred people, they often control at least one smuggling chain or have a complete industrial chain of planting, refining, and selling, or control the vast majority of industries in the red light district. Some of the best among them have even achieved a monopoly in a certain industry in a certain region. At this level, the profits they can extract each day have reached an astonishing level, and thus they also reach a point of saturation. Above that, they can no longer be called gangs, but rather family crime syndicates. The 12 mafia families that rule Gotham, apart from the core armed forces controlled by their leaders, do not actually have any business that they need to personally handle. What they need to do is remotely control these big gangs. Each mafia family has dozens or even hundreds of big gangs under their command, each in charge of different businesses in different areas. When Falcone established the 12 families, he divided them into 12 different industries, allowing each family to focus on a different aspect. Falcone, on the other hand, sits atop the pyramid, issuing orders to all families and gangs. In collecting and analyzing this information, Bruce discovered that Gotham's seemingly chaotic and disorderly rules were actually a fairly solid pyramid, where wealth was extracted layer by layer from the criminal industry and then redistributed and produced at the top. In this cycle, Gotham has developed its own unique ecosystem, creating the largest concentration of crime industries in the United States. At the same time, Bruce discovered that, contrary to his expectations, from a sociological and economic perspective, the city's industrial structure was damnably healthy. Whether it was the distribution of industrial scale at each level or the so-called division of industrial clusters, it was actually better than most cities in the United States. As the investigation deepened, Bruce gradually began to doubt his initial intentions, because he discovered that although Gotham was evil, it was not actually poor, and the people's standard of living was not low. Apart from being very dangerous, the people here were quite wealthy. During his travels across the United States, Bruce also studied the living standards of people in major American cities. He discovered that the living standards of the vast majority of people in Gotham, this damned city, were actually far above the passing grade. During his visit to the hospital, Bruce met an old man from a strategic city, whom people called Rifle. Lai Fuqiang was originally going to storm the city, but his daughter married a low-level gang leader in Gotham. This gang leader was framed, and his daughter almost suffered the same fate. Upon receiving his daughter's plea for help, Lai Fuqiang grabbed an old-fashioned rifle and rushed into Gotham, killing the gang members who wanted to frame his son-in-law with a few shots. The Lauren family, one of the 12 families, took a liking to this old man's fiery temper and his excellent skills, and now he owns a restaurant in the Lauren family's West End. Unlike other gang members, this old man was genuinely hospitalized. He suffered from chronic headaches, which appeared to be a complication of anxiety. His son-in-law used his connections to get him admitted for treatment, and after 2 courses of treatment, he is much better now. It's the same everywhere. It's the same everywhere. Rifle, puffing on a cigar, leaned against the hospital bed and said to Bruce, "What do you think a city like this would be like? Everyone lives on clean streets, every family has a car, and kids go to school in uniforms." He took another drag of his cigarette. The old man even had the air of a southern aristocrat, like a real Rifle. Amidst the smoke, he slowly recalled, "When I met Mary, it was decades ago. Back then, I was just a poor kid, trying to make my way in the city with nothing but my bare hands. There are gangs in Gotham, too. I work for them, but it's nothing like Gotham. I earn so little, sometimes I don't even have a penny in my pocket. I want to marry Mary, but I have no money. How can we get married?" So I took a gun and started working as a hitman, which made my life a little better. By the time my daughter was born, I was doing pretty well. Although I didn't have much education, I think Gotham is much better. Bruce said, "Is Gotham better than storming the city?" If it weren't for the fact that the person who said this was a knowledgeable-looking old man, Bruce would have thought he had lost his mind. "I know you respectable young men think this city is rotten, full of gangs and everyone is a criminal. But for people like us, it doesn't matter who we work for. We'll work for whoever pays us the most. In Gotham, if you're a full-fledged member of a gang, you can actually make a lot of money. And for someone like me, who owns a restaurant or a bar, it's no different from running a big business. Moreover, gang members are actually safer here. There is a set of rules here. If you don't want to declare war on a gang, it's best not to mess with its people, even if they are just the lowest-ranking thugs. So, those who join gangs to make a living are actually safer than in other places, because the gangs call the shots here. Once you become a member of the gang, your words carry more weight." I know. Rifle put down his cigarette and said, "I know very well that being a killer will bring retribution. I will go to hell, and Satan's judgment will be waiting for me, but I don't care. Do you know why?" Before Bruce could answer, Rifle said to himself, "I need to fill my stomach first, earn more money, and live a better life. God didn't let me be born into a family as well off as yours. My father gambled away everything, my mother ran off with someone else, and my only possession was a not-so-good old gun. So I thought, what can I do if I do this? After coming to Gotham, I realized that the people who built this city must be geniuses. Don't you think these gangs are planned too well? It has even achieved a perfect balance, allowing the city to run for a long time and people to live quite well. My son-in-law has a guy working for him. What was his name again? Never mind. We all call him One Hand. His left hand was chopped off when he was a child by his father, who was brain damaged from drug use. But he's been working for the casino owner on their street since he was a kid, specializing in throwing dice. Last year, he even bought a car, and he's getting married next month. The gang's business is huge, and they are short of people. As long as someone has hands and feet and can work, they will take anyone. If the kids don't go to school, they can learn a skill in the underworld. Those with a brain can work in restaurants and learn to cook from the boss or learn to bartend. The most skilled ones are those who can learn skills in casinos. They are all natural-born clever kids. Those who are agile can become pickpockets, those with good eyesight can become lookouts, and at the very least, they can learn a few fighting skills from others. There are so many gangs, restaurants, bars, casinos, and auto repair shops. They either need employees or they need security guards, so you can make a living anywhere. In my opinion, the economy has been even better in the last 2 years. If I save up a bit more, I might even be able to buy a small detached house on the edge of the wealthy area in the south. Oh, you should live in the center of that area. After all, they say you're a big tycoon. My grandson isn't as lucky as you, but he's still better off than me. At least he was born in a house that doesn't let in any drafts, and his mother takes good care of him while his father goes out to earn money. We're doing pretty well, right? Perhaps because his headache had improved a lot. The old man seemed quite energetic, constantly muttering about details of his life. At this moment, Bruce's thoughts drifted far away. A single sentence from the rifle made him start to think. Gotham's criminal industry is so well organized that it's almost impossible for it to have formed naturally. Gangs arise from chaos, and it's impossible for everyone to spontaneously organize these industries. How did this city become the strange place it is today? Could it be that someone deliberately designed it this way? So what is his purpose? If he has the ability to plan the industry chain so perfectly, why does he have to turn this place into a crime capital? Can't he do something else? Gotham is simply the biggest oddity among all American cities. It has been running smoothly for so long in a bizarre and twisted way, becoming one of the most prosperous cities on the East Coast by taking an unconventional approach. It has also risen to the top of the U.S. city GDP rankings in an extremely outrageous way. People's living standards are not only adequate, but also on the verge of excellence. Its creator must have been a genius. He wrote order from disorder, creating a new urban operating model almost out of thin air. But he must also be a madman, using his insane creativity to personally build the world's largest city of sin. Bruce thought that perhaps here genius and madness are separated by only a fine line. Gotham is like a coin standing between the two, seemingly about to fall at any moment, yet it still oscillates on that line to this day. Everyone here, like this city, has two sides. They are both geniuses with special talents and unparalleled madmen. Genius on the left, madness on the right, and everyone in Gotham is like the traffic rules here. I'm going straight, I'll never turn. Today's 10,000-word update is here. Regarding the update schedule, the update was posted late at night on the day of the release because we needed to track first-time subscriptions. Since the release was late at night, the update was posted late at night. Normally, updates are posted during the day. Those who get up early don't need to stay up late to wait. Updates are usually posted at noon or in the afternoon. Chapter 74 Gotham, 1987, Part 1. The cool morning breeze rustled the branches outside the window, and the orange morning light shone through the layers of heavy curtains, illuminating the dim room. There was a knock on the bedroom door. Schiller turned over, and the valet outside said, "Sir, a gentleman named Gordon called you 10 minutes ago. I told him to call him back after you get up." Schiller said slowly, his voice a little hoarse, "I understand." He sat up in bed, waking up from his drowsy state, and walked to the window. He pulled back one of the curtains with one hand and saw the milkman on his bicycle ring his bell at the door. Soon someone came out and took the milk jug from him. This is an estate in the west side of Gotham, and it was Schiller's new home in Gotham. Although the faculty housing at Gotham University is decent, he really should buy his own house. This is the old town of Gotham City. Unlike the wealthy Southern District, this area was established by a group of British nobles when European immigrants arrived in America. Therefore, most of the buildings here are traditional English manners. Later, due to the bias in urban planning and the more advantageous geographical location of the South, the wealthy district moved from the west to the south. Most of the old manor houses remaining here retain a classic English style. However, since few of the descendants of those nobles continued to live here, most of these manor houses are now uninhabited. Schiller bought one of them at a very good price, the one that was best maintained and had the decoration style he liked the most. He didn't buy a house in the wealthy southern area, not because he couldn't afford it, but for a very practical reason. His estate in the west was closer to Gotham University, where he worked. To commute to work in the affluent southern district, he had to drive long distances, crossing most of Gotham City. The worst part is that you have to pass through the most congested city center during peak hours. Therefore, no matter how luxurious the villas in the wealthy southern districts are, they are definitely not within Schiller's range of choices. He is not Bruce Wayne, who would simply take a helicopter if there is a traffic jam. He does not want to spend most of the day on the road. Choosing an old-fashioned manor in the West End has another advantage. It's less crowded and relatively quiet, and there's less traffic early in the morning, allowing Schiller to get a good night's sleep on his days off. Most importantly, this place is far from Wayne Manor and also far from the mountain where Bruce wants to build the Batcave in the future. If Batman were to be attacked by the Joker in the future, the area of effect attack would not reach him. After a while, the valet came in, opened and tied the curtains, and then said, "Breakfast is ready, sir." Schiller nodded, took the glasses case from him, put on his glasses, glanced at his watch, and asked, "When did Gordon call?" "About 25 minutes ago." Schiller glanced out the window again, then went downstairs to have breakfast. Descending the wooden staircase and passing through a somewhat dimly lit corridor, the dining room is located at the westernmost part of the manor building. Walking into the corridor, you'll find a semicircular dining room with tall arched windows. Dark green silk curtains hang on both sides of the windows, and silver cutlery on the peach-wood dining table gleams mysteriously in the dim morning light. The morning light streaming through the arched window fell on the dining table, the squares and round cutlery projected by the window creating a play of light and shadow. Sheila picked up the ironed newspaper from his right. The ink on the printed newspaper was slightly smudged, and the top line read, January 25, 1987. Cloudy, rain in the afternoon, Gotham Daily. While eating breakfast, Schiller searched for the information he needed in the newspaper. The font of the newspapers in this era was often printed very small, and the ink was easy to smudge, so he had to use a magnifying glass. After a while, the valet came in and said, "Mr. Gordon has arrived." Schiller put down his magnifying glass and looked up. Gordon, wearing a brown trench coat and a beret, still carried the chill of the night when he entered the restaurant. Seeing Schiller reading the newspaper, Gordon said, "Did you see today's news? The Godfather is furious. He won't allow metropolitan ships to dock at the eastern docks anymore." "I'm on that part right now," Schiller said, adjusting his glasses. "I stayed up all night writing my paper and missed your call this morning." Gordon took off his trench coat as he said, "It's nothing important. You know, I'm not busy at work lately. I just wanted to call and congratulate you on moving to your new house. Oh, and by the way, my gift is still in the car. No rush. Have you had breakfast yet? Why don't we sit down and have something to eat together?" Gordon handed his coat to the valet as he said, "I went to the station this morning and have already eaten. I brought you the information you asked me to find." As he spoke, he placed a black briefcase on the table and began rummaging through it, then took out a document and handed it to Schiller. Schiller said, "You've worked hard. Even if you've eaten, have a glass of hot milk." Gordon did not refuse. He sat down at the table and said, "At first, I was a little surprised when you said you wanted to take over Viscount Bernard's estate. After all, there aren't many people who like this kind of old-fashioned estate these days. Rich people in Gotham still prefer those detached houses, preferably with a large garage, so they can park all their luxury cars." Gordon looked around. The decor here was typical of English style. Silk curtains, knitted carpets, wooden furniture, and a stone fireplace with crackling flames. Even without getting close, you could feel the warmth. The Old Manor's restaurant wasn't very big, and the corridors were quite narrow. There were even extremely retro metal wall hangings and candlesticks on the walls, making the whole building feel like a trip back to the Victorian era. Gordon looked away and said, "But now it seems like this place suits you well. It's not that I have a particular fondness for the English estate. It's just that if I buy a house in the south, it will be too far from my workplace. Gotham's terrible traffic might make me miss all my morning classes." Gordon picked up his glass, took a sip of milk, and said, "Who isn't? Every time I go to work at the police station, I get blocked by those damn people at the central roundabout. You know, I got first place in my driving class at the police academy. This damn place is full of desperados. They never consider that flooring the gas pedal in a roundabout with hundreds of cars moving at the same time could suffocate them with the airbags that pop out." Gordon said angrily, "I can tell you were stuck for a while too," Schiller said with a laugh. "I've seen at least 10 talented F1 drivers on my way here," Gordon said, somewhat frustrated. "Speaking of which, this is also the fault of our new director. The police station is short-staffed, and we can't just transfer all the traffic police, can we? In the past few days, several new people have been transferred to my team. They don't know anything, and they just want to rush in with guns. Gordon shook his head and said, "We might as well go back and direct their traffic. The police have had an easier time, and that's all thanks to this chief. Just bear with it." Gordon put down his cup, rubbed his hands together and said excitedly, "But I'll soon be able to buy an apartment next to the police station too. Have you saved enough money? It'll be soon. Can you imagine? Last week I earned $80,000. Even if I don't earn that much next week, as long as I save up a little more, I can buy an apartment outright. How come there are so many? There shouldn't have been that many cases last week. Maybe only $50,000 at most," Schiller asked, turning to him as he ate. Gordon raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh, I forgot. You're not a local. In Gotham, you have to pay protection money no matter where you go, including the police. I'm the head of the field team now, and all the police officers under me have to give me 15% of their income. So you just accepted it? Like a mob boss?" Schiller joked. "You don't understand this place. They'll be scared if you don't take their money, because in Gotham, if you take their money, it means you're willing to keep working with them. If you don't take their money, they'll worry that the business will be gone tomorrow. I heard you're getting married to your fiancée. Is she in Gotham right now? When are you planning to have the wedding?" Gordon coughed and said, "She's going through the job transfer procedures. The handover at the company in Metropolis is particularly troublesome. It will take at least a week. But that's good. It gives me some time to buy the apartment I've got my eye on and give her a surprise." Schiller shook the newspaper in his hand, then said while reading it, "Have you decided what kind of wedding gift you want? I'm very rich now." "Really? Richer than Wayne?" Schiller rolled his eyes and said, "If I were richer than him, you wouldn't be here with me. Actually, if I hadn't made so much money, I wouldn't have wanted to get engaged so soon. I would probably be on vacation in Hawaii right now. I thought you worked all year round. Come on, I'd go crazy. I need to be healthy and in a good mood to survive in this damn city for long." Schiller took a cigar from the cigar box on the table, cut it open with scissors, and handed it to Gordon. Gordon took it, and Schiller took a match from the valet, lit it, and gave Gordon a cigarette. Then he took one and lit it himself. He exhaled a puff of smoke and said, "The Godfather has been in a bad mood lately. Some audacious people are trying to cause trouble on his turf." Gordon stretched out his hand holding the cigar, shifted his posture, leaned back on the armrest of his chair, and sighed comfortably. He said, "Why did you ask me to check Gotham's transient population data? Is there something wrong with Metropolis? I heard that those fiery Godfather's men came from Metropolis. Would you be surprised if I told you this trouble came along with me?" "Of course not." Gordon denied it almost without thinking. "When I first met you, I had a feeling that you were going to get into a lot of trouble." "Why?" "You can see it as a detective's intuition." "Interesting. Could you tell me more about it?" "I've seen a lot of criminals and they're different." Gordon straightened up, resting his wrists on the table, and said, "Completely different. Those bumbling thieves are completely different from real serious criminals. I have never heard of a serial killer yelling at a judge or using foul language. They have a kind of aura that is different from ordinary people. When you're facing Batman, I always feel like you're looking in a mirror. You think I look a lot like him? Are you serious? Some places are completely different, but some places are surprisingly similar." Schiller looked at Gordon and said, "Keep this sharpness, and you'll be the savior of Gotham." Gordon tapped his cigarette ash on the silver plate and said, "Godfather, this is going to be tough. The group that infiltrated seems to have some connections. They killed 2 of the Falcone family's bartenders. If you don't catch them soon, you'll lose face in Gotham, which is worse than anything else. The gangsters probably won't dare to provoke the Godfather anytime soon, right?" Schiller put down his newspaper and leaned back in his chair. "It's hard to say. Don't underestimate those people. Don't forget, Maroni is still alive. He made a fortune in the East End conflict and may be planning to challenge the Godfather. He's courting death." The smoke trailed off as he finished speaking. Schiller reached out and flicked his cigar with his fingertips, the fine dust slowly drifting down. "Not necessarily. Somehow, the Godfather bypassed him and had the old director Victor killed. I heard that he also wanted to get involved in Arkham Hospital, but the Godfather kicked him out. Maroni couldn't stand it. The East District is not peaceful. Maroni is eager to subdue the forces he has recruited. He needs a victory to establish his authority and to completely consolidate the new blood he has just absorbed. He dares to use the Godfather to establish his authority. Falcone will teach him a lesson. Schiller leaned back in his chair, tugging at his sweater collar, appearing relaxed. Gordon coughed twice more, squinting at the reflection on the silver plate through the smoke from the top of his cigar, and said, "Maroney is a formidable man, and the Godfather is getting old. You think he's more promising?" "No, I actually hope the old Godfather wins. As long as Falcone is still around, Gotham won't be in too much chaos. But once he's gone, it's hard to say." Gordon left quickly, as he had work to do. It was his peak season, and with another month of hard work, buying a villa wouldn't be a problem. After Gordon left, Schiller leaned back in his chair and finished his cigar, the smoke swirling around his fingertips. He hadn't been able to think so relaxedly in a long time. In this city fraught with danger, he doesn't even have time to rest, let alone smoke a cigarette, unless he's certain of his safety. Before this, Schiller had never thought about buying a house, nor did he need a home because he was not a Gotham native. He came from one of the safest and most orderly countries in the world. As the cigar burned, the smoke, several times thicker than that of cigarettes, drifted into various elusive and abstract shapes, evoking countless associations. In that psychedelic and sweet aroma, Schiller began to reminisce. He couldn't quite recall whether his first reaction to the shooting in Chicago after leaving his hometown was shock or excitement. All he remembered was that as the plane plummeted, the memories of his life, accompanied by weightlessness and lack of oxygen, blurred into a fog of the bizarre and turbulent events he had been involved in throughout his life. Just as they had hoped, when these memories dissipated with death, countless secrets were also buried forever. If there truly is a God in this world, Schiller thought, then this great being who can give people a second life must really know him well. Gotham is the world's sewer of evil, and good people are not flushed down the sewer. Schiller looked at the tip of the cigar between his fingers, where the flame gradually died down, the smoke began to thin, and the patterns that had formed slowly faded away. He knew that when he regained consciousness and learned from the original owner's memories that this was Gotham City, the excitement that filled his mind at first would eventually destroy all his ambitions for a peaceful life. Or rather, the enjoyment of the mundane and ordinary daily life was, from beginning to end, just a self-deception of a madman who was skilled in self-hypnosis, until he saw the appearance of Batman. As the smoke dissipated, Schiller recalled the feeling when he first used his rudimentary mind-reading ability to access Batman's inner thoughts. As Gordon said, he felt like he was looking in a mirror. So he gave Batman the answer he most wanted to hear, and then, almost impatiently, put an end to that dull, despairing life. And now, he has finally become a Gotham citizen, on the first birthday of his second life in the winter of 1987 in Gotham. Chapter 75 Gotham, 1987, Part 2. In the afternoon, just as the weather forecast in the newspaper had predicted, a light rain began to fall in Gotham. Schiller sat in his study in the Manor, the sound of rain outside the window like the best sleeping pill. On the somewhat cluttered desk, a stack of books cast undulating shadows under the light of the wall lamp. The reflections from the ink bottle and Schiller's lens shone brightly in the dimly lit room. He was holding a fountain pen, writing an invitation in complex and ornate cursive English. Customs are almost the same all over the world. When you move, you always invite your friends and family to come over for a visit. Schiller plans to invite a few of his few friends from Gotham over for dinner this weekend. The rain outside the window was getting heavier and heavier. Some humid air entered the room through the cracks in the window. In the light of the lamp, you could see tiny water vapor slowly falling onto the table. Soon, many tiny water droplets condensed on the part of the desk near the window, reflecting the firelight of the fireplace behind it, like rubies. As darkness fell, the fog, colder than during the day, caused a layer of frost to condense on the glass. Schiller put down his pen, rubbed his wrist, and looked up. Looking at Gotham from this angle, there's not much difference, except that Gotham in the rain is not only more gloomy, but also more tranquil, even giving people a rare sense of leisure. In any case, cities in the 1980s were much slower paced than the information society that followed. Schiller wrote letters all afternoon until his valet came to remind him that it was time for dinner, at which point he left his study. After finishing dinner, Schiller got dressed, grabbed his umbrella, and left home. By then, the rain that had been falling all afternoon in Gotham had stopped, leaving only the cool, damp air that filled the city. The puddles on the ground, like mercury mirrors in the darkness, reflected the streetlights into golden fragments, like fallen leaves left over from last autumn. When Schiller's heels stepped on them, this radiance vanished in the slight ripples and splashes of water. Just like customs all over the world, When you move, you always have to visit your neighbors. The security here is not bad, because anyone who can afford to live in and maintain such a manor is either rich or noble. Although it is no longer as prosperous as the wealthy areas in the south, the old town has a slow-paced, old-fashioned charm. A street away from Schiller's estate, there was an opera house, but few theater companies performed there, so it became a club for the local residents. Schiller walked to the theater entrance, where the waiters were clearly not very professional. They only came forward to open the door after Schiller had reached the steps. Schiller took off his hat and went inside. Although it was a cold, rainy night outside, the theater was warm. Schiller's glasses were fogged up, so he took them off, walked to the front desk, and gently tapped the table. The supervisor, who was dozing off, dazed himself for a moment, opened his eyes, saw someone, sat up straight, and asked, "Do you have an appointment?" "I am the new resident of the Viscount Manor. All drinks consumed here today will be on my tab. God bless everyone." The head waiter immediately became enthusiastic and said, "So it's you. I just received the news yesterday that the largest Viscount's manor has a new owner. Your vision is truly exceptional. It is a luxurious manor like this that is worthy of a generous gentleman like you. Don't worry. When everyone comes out later, they will all know that you are an easygoing gentleman." Listening to the supervisor's constant stream of praise, Schiller calmly placed a roll of dollars under the bell. The supervisor immediately said, "You don't need to mind the exterior of this building. After all, this is Gotham's oldest theater, so it's normal for it to be a bit worn. But our service will always be the best." As Schiller descended the theater steps, he glanced back at what was probably Gotham's oldest theater, its walls bearing the marks of time. Many years ago, it had hosted one renowned theater company after another, and countless actors had performed here, one after another. But now it is completely deserted. Its old facade is like a stone tablet recording the history of Gotham, bearing the marks of wind, frost, rain, and snow. It may have been more exciting than those fictional dramas, but not many people are willing to watch it anymore. Schiller returned to the estate late at night, but he still had some things left to write the night before. Thanks to this relatively slow-paced era, Schiller didn't have to worry about being bombarded with text messages or phone calls. He had ample time to slowly read books, find the knowledge he needed from printed materials, and then write them down on paper with a pen. Suddenly, there was a soft rustling behind him. Without turning around, Schiller said, "Gordon came to visit, at least he brought a gift. And you?" "An uninvited bat." Batman's shadow was cast in multiple layers by the wall lamp. He said, "Deliver it during the day. Gordon is getting married soon. Aren't you planning to give him a gift as this tight-suited weirdo? After all, he's your business partner." "I have no gift to give you." Batman's tone was always low and calm, making one feel drowsy in the late-night room. "So what brings you here?" "To congratulate you on moving to your new home. I think you explored every room in this manor before I did, and if nothing unexpected happens, you should have also obtained the architectural plans through some means." Batman didn't answer, which seemed to be his tacit agreement. He never shied away from showing Schiller his overly cautious and skeptical nature. "Did you read today's newspaper? Did you see the news about the Iron Curtain? That's none of my business. This is a major event for the whole world. Gotham will not get better or worse because of this." Then both of them fell silent, with only the scratching of Schiller's pen on the paper echoing in the quiet room late at night. After a while, Batman said, "Those guys from Metropolis are probably here to kill you. Then let them come? Or do you think the people of Gotham are afraid of the people of Metropolis?" Batman remained silent again. "I guess you had a fight with your housekeeper, didn't you?" Batman didn't answer, but Schiller continued, "There was once a guy like that who would stay up late and go racing cars because he had a fight with his dear butler. Why were they arguing? Because that person hasn't decided whether or not to marry their housekeeper." Batman remained silent once again. "I guess your butler must be heartbroken about your injury, but he doesn't want to stop you from continuing the career you love, so he has to deal with these feelings on his own. But you noticed that he seemed sad, and you didn't want to stop your career, but you also didn't want to hurt him. Your exceptional wisdom and meticulous logic are useless at this time, so you can only go out and race cars in the middle of the night. Let me guess, your new Batmobile should be parked in front of my house, and its overheated engine probably hasn't cooled down yet. Does mind reading really exist? Stop asking such stupid questions. If so, can you tell me what Alfred is thinking? You're much more straightforward than that person, but that makes sense. Besides family ties, He's also troubled by romantic relationships. Love, the most unpredictable thing. I offered to tell him the answer, but he refused. Batman's gaze fell on the ring on Schiller's ring finger. He asked, "You're married? Didn't your wife come to Gotham with you?" "It seems you don't really want that answer either." Schiller said, "Then go. You might as well go find Gordon to take you in. If you stay here with me, you'll only get answers you don't want to hear." Batman said, "This manor is indeed very nice. There are 36 rooms in total. You are sleeping in the master bedroom on the east side upstairs, and there are 35 other rooms there. I'm not giving you the key. I don't need a key." Schiller pressed his finger to his brow and said, "But what if your butler comes looking for me when you don't come home at night? Why do you seem more afraid of him than me? It's hard to explain to you, but I'm really worried that your housekeeper will come knocking on the door." Seeing that Batman still wouldn't give up, Schiller could only say helplessly, "Fine, if you want to stay here. I need your parents' permission. Go call them now. I need their approval before I can let you stay here." "Batman, the phone is downstairs. Either go dial it or get lost." In the end, Batman compromised. When it came to issues concerning his butler, he always acted like a child, just like Stark did with Pepper. Schiller didn't mind Batman staying overnight, nor did he mind Batman thoroughly investigating his new home. It was bound to happen sooner or later anyway. If Batman didn't investigate when he was 18, he would eventually investigate when he was 28 or 38. Nothing in Gotham could escape Batman's eyes. Schiller wasn't the Joker. He didn't have time to play hide-and-seek with Batman every day. After a while, Schiller finished his paper. It was already late at night, and it was pitch black outside the window, with only distant lights reflected in the puddles formed by the rain. Soon, the valet alerted him that the phone was ringing. Schiller picked up the receiver, and Batman stood in the darkest corner of the living room, listening to him talk on the phone. "Yes, that's right. There's no trouble at all. Yes, I know they always do this. I've seen it quite a few times before." "Really? That's quite serious. I have a professional first aid kit here." "Oh, really? You're such a responsible housekeeper." "I don't think it matters." Schiller looked up at Batman. For some reason, Batman felt his heart suddenly pounding, like a student nervously trying to deduce the level of anger from a teacher's few words after receiving a phone call to their parents. "Okay. Please don't worry. No problem. That's settled then. Tomorrow morning, right?" "I think so. Okay. Goodbye." Schiller saw Batman open his mouth as if to ask something, but in the end he didn't ask anything. Schiller said, "Your butler said you were injured, but he should have already treated you." After saying that, he glanced at the grandfather clock beside him and said, "It's too late now. Your housekeeper said you should be in bed before 9 o'clock. It's already more than 3 hours late. Now take the keys and go upstairs quickly." "I don't need a key." After leaving behind his last words, Batman disappeared. Schiller shook his head and went upstairs as well. Schiller already knew Batman's true identity, so Batman didn't do anything like sleeping in the Batman suit. When Schiller knocked on his door, Bruce was wearing his pajamas. Normally, when Batman is serious, you can only see his chin, but now, Bruce's demeanor is completely different from his usual self. This is Batman with his full face on display. But it was no use. When Schiller told him that Alfred hoped he could get back for breakfast the next morning, he still showed a rather conflicted and complicated expression. "I advise you to go back. If he comes to your door, I will absolutely not help you. You should know that teachers will always stand on the same side as parents." Seeing that Bruce still seemed unwilling, Schiller had to threaten him further, saying, "If I really see Alfred tomorrow, I will have to talk to him about your studies. You barely passed the final exams this time, but your ranking is in the lower middle range. More importantly, you missed submitting your assignments 6 times this semester, and you didn't write enough words for most of them. I've kept all the assignments you've submitted. If you don't want your butler to see your nonsensical articles and academic garbage that's useless except for polluting other people's brains, you'd better go to sleep now and get up early tomorrow morning to go back to your Wayne Manor." Before Bruce could say anything, Schiller slammed his bedroom door shut. At night, Bruce lay in bed, reflecting on the events that had recently occurred. Thanks to Schiller's ingeniously creative supply chain, there have been many gang fights lately, making Batman's job increasingly difficult. During the day, he was busy conducting various investigations at the hospital to unravel the intricate relationships between gangs. At night, he had to keep an eye on the scenes of various shootouts to prevent them from getting too carried away and causing too much damage. The police have become much stronger with heavy weapons, but that doesn't mean the gangs are completely without means of countermeasures. When the police suppress the gangs with heavy firepower, the gangs will naturally think of using even more ferocious firepower to retaliate. As a result, the scale of the war is constantly escalating, which means that Batman has not had time to upgrade his various equipment before he is drawn into some more ferocious firepower conflicts. This meant that the Bat armor, originally designed for pistol bullets and melee weapons, was unable to protect against damage from machine gun grenades during a firefight. A few nights ago, Batman was hit by a machine gun bullet. This kind of damage is incomparable to that of a pistol bullet. Each machine gun bullet is as long as a palm. Fortunately, Batman was only grazed on the shoulder. If this bullet had really hit him solidly, half of his lung would probably have been completely destroyed. But this also caused him very serious damage, arguably the most serious injury he suffered during his time as Batman. When he rushed back to Wayne Manor, he was already delirious. The fact that he was still conscious enough to return to Wayne Manor was a testament to his extraordinary willpower that saved his life. Bruce already knew that he was not very sensitive to some painkillers and anesthetics and would often wake up during anesthesia. This time was no different. In the middle of the operation, he saw Alfred sitting alone on the side of the operating table in a half-dreaming state. He found it hard to describe the expression on Alfred's face that he saw at the time, which made his heart, which had hardly been beating fiercely for many years, clench painfully. He suddenly realized that Alfred was different from the one he remembered. He had aged a lot and seemed much more depressed than when his parents were still alive. He then realized that the deaths of the Wayne couple had not only affected him alone. And perhaps, when Alfred realized he was almost going to suffer the same pain again, he had grown much older. Bruce lay in bed, tossing and turning, his mind filled with the image of Alfred that he had vaguely seen. What saddened him even more was that when he woke up from the surgery, Alfred said nothing. He didn't stop Bruce from doing anything. He simply prepared breakfast as usual, just like countless mornings when Bruce would wake up from nightmares. Sitting at the table, Bruce could barely eat. He was Batman, but he was still a human being. Few people could maintain a calm mindset while eating when faced with such intense emotional turmoil. So he only ate a couple of bites and left Wayne Manor as if he were fleeing. Actually, he went to Gordon's place first, but he just happened to arrive just as Gordon was driving to Schiller's house. He followed Gordon the whole way, and Batman even saw their entire conversation in the restaurant from outside the window. He also saw Schiller sitting alone in a chair, smoking an entire cigar. That professor felt unfamiliar to him. He had never seen Schiller like this before. He seemed relaxed, yet extremely cold and sharp. Although Schiller often appeared serious at school, this was completely different. It was like another person, a stranger. He thought that perhaps the professor he knew before was just a disguise, just like him. Two madmen play their respective roles in this crazy city, appearing in the most ordinary social positions, as a teacher and a student troubled by the trivialities of daily life. This might not be a copy of Pride and Prejudice, but rather a copy of An Actor Prepares. In the dilapidated and decaying theater of Gotham, on the stage of Gotham University, the first act of this absurd drama appears both strange and comical. The first teacher Batman encounters on his first day of school, a seemingly strict and rigid teacher who appears to have no desire to cause trouble, gives him the answer he most wants during a seemingly unmotivated psychological consultation. After one play after another came to an end, the two actors finally met offstage. Putting aside their social identities, the storylines of these absurd dramas are by no means coincidental. Madmen always attract madmen, and eccentrics often meet eccentrics. This is just another way of showing that birds of a feather flock together. Bruce lay in bed, a drowsy feeling washing over him. In his half-awake state, he heard the dull thud of the clock pendulum downstairs in the manor, permeating his dreams. Apart from that, on that cold night in Gotham 1987, the only sounds that could be heard were the barely audible wind and the constant burning of the fireplace.